Winning an argument is not about being right, but knowing how to communicate strategically. After many defeats, I've discovered 10 powerful methods for dominating any argument. And not only that, I will make a tier list to help you understand which methods work best. Method 1. Judo technique. There is one thing I can guarantee will happen during any discussion. Your opponent will attack you, your arguments, or both. Typically, the discussion follows a script. You both make your points and criticize the others. But this is where strategic thinking comes in, like a judoka. Some time ago, I read this book that explains this concept very well. The best thing to do is to use his own energy against him, conceding an argument here and there, and then say, "There is one point that doesn't convince me, and I want to contest it." Don't be afraid to admit where they're right, because that gives you the confidence to point out where they're wrong. With this unexpected concession, you will dampen his energy. We often see concession as a sign of weakness. It is not. It is a sign of strength and confidence. It shows others that you are open-minded and that you are not an inflexible ideologue. I put this method in C because it doesn't give you real control over the discussion. Method 2. Socrates technique. Socrates used this method to expose contradictions in people's thinking, making them question their own beliefs. Instead of jumping in with your own opinion right away, you can ask questions that nudge the other person to think more critically about their stance. If you are good in school, you will always get a good job. So you think people with high grades are automatically more competent? Don't you think other skills are also needed? By doing this, they'll start to see the cracks in their argument. It's a classic Socratic move. Solid, but I'd rank it a B. Method 3. Hypnotic language. The words you use carry a lot of weight. Try swapping out you with I feel. It makes you come across less defensive. Watch how it changes the vibe. Bro, you small bad. What? I feel frustrated by your smell.
You're right, bro.
See the difference? Also, throwing in some implied statements or rhetorical questions can get the other person to agree with you without them even realizing it. Saying something like, "Of course, we all know this makes the most sense." It makes your point feel like a done deal, and the other person is less likely to challenge it. Oh, and don't forget to give that intense maniac look. I put this method in B. Method 4. Contrast effect. Imagine you're in a debate with someone who totally disagrees with you. If you start with something exaggerated, your next proposal will seem immediately more reasonable. I'd put this method in the C category though, because it's really only useful in situations where you're negotiating or trying to find a middle ground. Method 5. Information bombing. If you hit someone with a ton of facts and numbers, they're probably going to feel overwhelmed and start doubting their own beliefs. Have you considered the 20% failure rate, the data on the current market, the feedback from experts? A flood of information can leave the other person unable to respond to every single statement, making it seem like you are in total control of the situation. This method is clearly in the A range. Method 6. Gish Gallop. The goal of this method is the same as the previous one, but with a twist. The information you present can be half-truths or even totally false. This method follows Brandolini's law, which says, the amount of energy needed to disprove bullshit is greater than the energy needed to create it. Now, if you're on the receiving end of a Gish Gallop, don't waste your time trying to debunk every half-truth they throw at you. Instead, reveal exactly the strategy they're using, then focus on the weakest argument and destroy it. I put the Gish Gallop in B because the use of falsehoods can undermine your credibility. Method 7. Change of focus. This method is also known as the red herring, and it was made famous by the English polemicist William Cobbett back in 1807. When you feel like you're losing ground, you throw in a distraction to shift attention away from the main issue. The distracting element can easily be one of these logical fallacies I wrote about. This allows you to stall and disorient your opponent. So, yeah, I'd say this method definitely earns an A. Method 8. Coherence principle. People usually stick to their views, right? So, if you can get them to agree on a small point first, you can use that same consistency to guide them toward a bigger idea. If we agree that A is true, then we can't ignore that B is the logical next step. Once your opponent has agreed to a small point, it's harder for them to backtrack on something bigger. If you find an opponent who totally disagrees, it is difficult to get him to accept some point points of the argument. That is why I put it in B. Method 9. Rule of 3. People tend to perceive groups of 3 elements as complete and easy to understand. If something happens once, it's just an isolated incident. Twice, it's a coincidence. By the 3rd time, you start seeing it as a pattern and believe it's true. So, if someone asks you why you did something, give 3 reasons. If they ask for your opinion, give 3 points. The idea is simple. The number 3 brings structure, clarity, and makes your argument more convincing. That's why I definitely give this method an A. Method 10. Lightning fast jokes. Lightning jokes are used to throw off an opponent or shut down their argument, leaving them speechless. And that's exactly what a perfectly executed replica does. It takes advantage of a vulnerable moment to flip the conversation in your favor. The best lines are short, punchy, and said at the right moment in the argument. Like these. That's why they're often called one-liners. I put this method on the C list because it doesn't allow you to win the debate, but it does allow you to raise the bar in the discussion in your favor. Each method relies on a different communication strategy, but it's super important to keep in mind that the right approach really depends on who you're talking to and the situation you're in. Everyone reacts differently to different communication styles. In the end, the ability to adapt to the situation is what will really make a difference in the success of your discussion.